points here today. So we gave you a full DBQ, and I'm sorry, that's a mistake. It should actually be on imperialism. And there's the correct prompt, to evaluate whether the new imperialism of the late 1800s and early 1900s was caused primarily by political motivations or by economic motivations. So a very typical DBQ prompt like we've been having you practice. And if you're here with us and haven't written it, you can see the tiny URL at the bottom, and that's where the documents for this DBQ are. So we're going to get into some samples of good examples of submissions that you gave that earned the points. And I'm going to start off today with context and thesis. And this response is from Kirthi at Strawberry Crest High School in Florida, and they are the Chargers. And so you can see this handwritten response that does what we've been asking you to do as you're setting the stage in the first paragraph of your essay. So we're going to start off with this. New imperialism took place in many European countries during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. States like Great Britain expanded their empire from Africa to countries like India. With advanced weaponry like accurate guns and advances in medicine, particularly the discovery of quinine as a treatment for malaria, Europeans were able to conquer African countries and tribes much more effectively than the time of colonialism. So that's really nice context. There's evidence there. We like that. And then we've moved on to the thesis. Although new imperialism of the late 1800s and early 1900s was in part due to economic reasons, I like that because we're foreshadowing what's going to maybe come as a complexity paragraph at the end. But here's the actual answer is it was primarily caused by political reasons. And then we move on to the line of reasoning because countries can showcase their prestige and increase their power. So really nice job. It's very, very simple, but really well done. Good evidence there. So Kirthi, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Nice job. That was great.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Well done.
All right, so that was the A and B category on the rubric that we've gone over with you, and you can look at yesterday's video to kind of get an explanation of those. And now we're into the part of the C, which is evidence using the documents, and we want to use them to support an argument. So this was like the first body paragraph of this essay by Emma, and Emma goes to John Rowland High School in California, and they're the Raiders. So Emma started off, and I'm sorry about that. The new imperialism of the late 1800s and early 1900s was caused primarily by political motivations because of the increasing competition and tension between European powers for more power and prestige. So there's a topic sentence, right? And then we move on, and there's a description of two documents. And I went ahead and included the whole paragraph because I really liked the transition that was here. For example, in a political cartoon published by Le Petit Journal, it can be seen that Britain and Germany are fighting over colonies in China, and that was the visual. And this is significant because it shows the importance of colonization and its impact on increasing the power of a nation during a time of growing competition between world powers. So that's really nice. I like the way that the document is here circled, but both Todd and I really appreciate that, just cueing the reader that you've analyzed the document and you've brought it back to support your argument. So that's great. Then we go on to the next document. Additionally, in a speech delivered before the French Parliament, Jules Ferry states that deciding to withdraw the competition for colonization is impossible due to its importance in a nation's power. And then again, connecting it back to the argument. This evidence implies that colonization was a necessary part of European advancement because a nation's worth and prestige depended mainly on its colonies. And again, we've got that document too there. So this is a really nice example of someone who is using the content of the documents and clearly bringing that back to supporting an argument. And that is that higher bar point to receive 2 points. And you do that with 6 documents total, at least 6 or 7 in the DBQ to get those 2 points. All right, and then the last thing we're going to talk about is evidence beyond the documents. So this is where you're going to bring in evidence that isn't found in the documents. And we have this imperialism in the late 1800s and early 1900s was caused primarily by political motivations as countries wanted resources to become more powerful. All right, so we've got the topic sentence. And then we move on. In document 1, Leopold complains about how Belgium can never get any bigger and argues that colonies will make a country more powerful. So that's the content of that document 1. That is what Leopold says. Supports goes back to the argument with it. It shows that this wave of imperialism was about making countries politically stronger. Again, good job, simple, but well done. And then Isabel goes on to talk about this outside piece of information. Leopold will go on to establish the Congo Free State as his personal possession after the Berlin Conference in 1884-85, where he convinced the other states he wanted territory for humanitarian purposes. So this is definitely not in the documents. Isabel was able to bring that in and weave that into her argument, and I thought that was a really nice example of someone who did that. And Isabel's from Delaware Valley High School in Pennsylvania, and they are the Warriors.
Yeah, that looks good too. A couple good pieces of evidence in there.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we're going to move on to sourcing. And so this one was from Grace from Glenwood High School in Illinois. They're the Titans. And it was obviously a handwritten response, but it was between two pages. So I have two images and they kind of match up here because the paragraph continues. And so we'll begin at the top. Europeans also felt a desire and a need to help the non-Western countries Westernize. In helps of really, it's a safe word there. Some people like Marshall Henry Merlin will argue that Europeans are being virtuous. I like that, being virtuous by going to other countries and and I can't read that word, because the people, go ahead.
And colonizing.
And colonizing, thank you. Because the people of non-Western countries are, and then in quotes, uncivilized. So we have that blue is that topic sentence, and the yellow then is when we have this evidence or a summary of what's in the document itself. So again, this T structure that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. Then it continues with the analysis in the green, and I didn't want to go over all of it because it became harder to read when I was doing it. So Merlin's POV, you see that over there on the left, the point of view, and that's telling the reader that I'm going to try and do some analysis of point of view, make the source happy, we say. And so is unreliable because he is from a Western power, France, and the West's morals and way of life differ from those in Africa and Asia. This does not mean that those countries are uncivilized. They simply differ from the West. But as Merlin is from the West, he sees anything different from the West as odd. And so I really think that that is going to make that the point of view, the analysis of it work. But Grace keeps going, and then she goes and she would give us, if we were doing, she gives evidence beyond the document here. And so we'll just keep going because she also sees it. He also seems to be influenced by the ideas of Darwin and the social Darwinism idea. This idea presents that some races are superior because the West has better standards of sanitation, lower death rates. The West assumes the title of the most fit race. Kipling's most famous book, The White Man's Burden, showcases this idea and even suggests that white people have a duty to help the inferior races and that this duty is a burden on the whites. Merlin states this idea, Doc 7. Other people, and then it just continues. So this piece here about social Darwinism is not included, even though we're bringing in this piece on Doc 7. And so I really like what you did there, Grace, because it was almost like I could have moved the green line down a bit because it's all part of that analysis. It's really nicely done. So thank you for submitting that.
Yeah, that's great. Lots of evidence. Kipling, oh, that's awesome.
Right, and that's what, yeah, I put this outside evidence supports that document, but we do have some stuff kind of mixed in there with Doc 7 that I really liked it.
Yep, and thank
you, yes, for ending your in-text citation.
We like that.
Yeah, so right. I'm sorry. So the Doc 7 is related to Merlin. So there we go. Okay, we're going to go to complexity. We keep saying there are many paths to complexity. And what does that mean? And that final bullet is the one that I focus on with my students a lot about how we can qualify an argument. Part of the reason we focus on that is the way the prompts are set up for us. But there are lots of other ways to do this. And we have a nuanced one to share with you today. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide and take a look at that. And it has to be part of the argument, not merely a passing phrase or reference. It needs to be, it needs to be substantial.
Okay.
Here we go. This is from, it looks to me like Sunny, but I think it may be pronounced Sunni. And they're from Benjamin Cardozo High School in Bayside, Queens. They are the judges. We get a lot of stuff from them. And I really like the stuff that we get from Bayside, or from Benjamin Cardozo High School. So I put in the box that we're explaining nuance of an issue, analyzing multiple variables. And so we do have the T structure here, and you can kind of see the coloration as we go through. But let's begin with this topic sentence, or what that main argument is. And this is the third body paragraph of the essay. While much of imperialism was focused on the political gains, so signaling to the reader, I have been arguing political gains in my previous paragraphs. Then they make this nod. There was also some economic benefits to be had and were considered before taking over more land. However, most economic benefits also came with benefits that would increase power for the nation in Europe. And this is kind of the piece that I think is a little nuanced, because they're recognizing this kind of linkage between economic and political power. So it continues. An example of this would be in the revolution of a German social democratic party. It was stated that imperialism existed so they could fuel capitalism, so that greed for wealth could be somewhat satisfied and for new opportunities to gain money. So that's kind of our describing this piece of evidence that supports this claim. Then in the green, we have this analysis of that first part. So we're using two different documents here. So it continues. This is important because, and I love when you kind of begin your analysis with this is important because, or this is significant because. It kind of cues the reader. I'm trying to tell you some analysis of why this is important. It shows how imperialism was directly linked to getting more money, but without the added benefits of increasing power that comes from the increasing gain of money. Imperialism would not have been a thing that European nations rushed through Doc 6. So I really appreciate that. I felt that's a little nuance there. Next, it continues with another example in the yellow of this would be the speech given by Joseph Chamberlain, in which he claims the decline to trade would be the end of Britain. And the only way to fix this issue was gain more colonies and to send more of their unemployed so Britain could continue to flourish. So that was really good too. And then the green is the analysis. This is important because it shows how there was some economic motive for Britain to continue to colonize parts of Asia and Africa, as they needed more land and space to keep their economy afloat. But to Britain, another important, and you wrote palace, but I think you meant purpose, was to continue staying the dominant world power in Europe and continue getting stronger to gain more influence. Really liked, I think that's really nuanced well. And so we have these multiple variables explaining nuance of an issue. And then it's concluding that therefore the main reason for imperialism was political, even if there was an economic gain involved. And so that is really nicely put out there. I think it's really, really well done.
And that's even more than just saying it's political and it's economic. So I really, that's a fantastic paragraph.
Yeah, and so when we're saying, does the response recognize complexity? Absolutely, the complexity of this period of time.